Welcome to Stories for Sleep. This is a space created for the moments before sleep, where science is not told for analysis or memorization, but to soothe the nervous system. On this channel, we tell stories about nature, the earth, the universe, and the human mind, in a gentle, unhurried voice, deep enough for the mind to feel supported, yet soft enough that you do not need to stay alert. In today's video, the most relaxing facts about winter to help you fall asleep. Dreamy science. We will enter winter, not as a harsh or empty season, but as a special state of the world. A time when nature changes mode, the air becomes layered, light transforms, sound travels farther, and life withdraws inward to reorganize itself. Winter becomes a vast natural laboratory where the deep laws of the world reveal themselves very gently, very slowly. You do not need to understand everything that is about to be shared. You do not need to listen all the way to the end. If you fall asleep halfway through, that is perfectly aligned with the spirit of Stories for Sleep. These scientific facts are not here to keep you awake, but to guide you into a state of safety, stillness, and easeful sleep. Now allow yourself to lie still. There is no need to try to relax. Simply listen, and let the Earth's winter gently lead you into sleep. When winter arrives, the world seems to slow down. Sounds grow more distant, light becomes softer, and every movement from tree branches and flowing rivers to the rhythm of human breathing appears to enter a different tempo. Yet it is precisely within this slowing that many people find their minds more restless than ever. When the outer world grows quiet, inner thoughts become clearer, sharper, and sometimes harder to stop. Carl Gustav Jung believed that the quietest moments in nature often awaken the deepest layers of the unconscious, where ancient memories, symbols, and emotions begin to speak. This video was created for moments like these, not to fill the silence of winter but to accompany it, not to explain or analyze in a way that keeps you alert, but to tell science like a slow dream where each fact opens gently, then closes again without asking you to remember it. In the most relaxing facts about winter to fall asleep, to dreamy science, we enter winter not as a season of death, but as a special state of the earth. When temperatures drop, the world does not disappear, it simply changes how it exists. The air becomes layered, sound travels farther, light bends through ice crystals, water, soil, rock, and even life itself behave differently. Winter becomes a vast natural laboratory, where the foundational laws of the world are revealed more clearly than ever. Jung believed that human beings need not only light to live, but also darkness to understand themselves. Winter, with its ice, snow, and long nights, resembles a collective symbol of turning inward. When the outer world grows quieter, we are given the chance to listen to deeper rhythms, the rhythm of nature and the rhythm of our own minds. On this journey, you will hear about phenomena that appear only in the cold snow, carrying cosmic dust, thunder within snowstorms, light forming halos and pillars in the night sky. You will explore how winter reveals the invisible structures of the world, flows of heat, paths of sound, layers of memory preserved in ice and snow. And you will see that life does not truly hibernate as we often imagine. It simply shifts into another state. Slower, deeper, more economical, yet quietly continuing all the same. The value of this video does not lie in how much you learn, but in the sense of safety that comes from realizing that even in the cold, the world is still supported by resilient and intelligent structures. Winter is not an interruption of life, but an essential part of its balancing cycle, much like sleep is for the human mind. You do not need to follow every detail. If you fall asleep halfway through, that is perfectly in tune with the spirit of this video. Let these scientific facts drift past you like falling snow, soft, slow, and leaving no pressure behind. Now that you are here, allow yourself to do nothing more. Simply listen, and let the Earth's winter guide you very slowly, very deeply, into sleep. Part 1. Winter as a special mode of the Earth. When winter arrives, the world does not disappear. It changes mode. Just as a human being shifts from wakefulness into sleep, the Earth also enters a different state, not weaker, not less alive, but more subtle, slower, deeper. Winter is not the absence of life, but another configuration of the same world. Carl Gustav Jung believed that so-called unusual states, dreams, the unconscious darkness, silence, are not secondary aspects of life, but foundations that allow life to regulate itself. Seen in this way, winter is not a passive season. It is a psychological state of the planet. When temperatures drop deeply, the Earth does not simply become colder. It changes how it operates. Layered air, when the sky gains depth. In warm seasons, air often moves vigorously. Thermal convection mixes layers together. Sound dissipates quickly, and the sky seems open. Winter is different. Cold air is heavier and settles lower. Warmer air rests above it. The layers of air stack upon one another like layers of consciousness and the unconscious in the human mind. The winter sky is not chaotic, it is stratified. Under these conditions, sound can travel farther. A footstep, a voice, a distant train, all can carry far across the cold space. The world hears itself more clearly. Jung once wrote in Psychological Types, "The lowering of temperature produces a corresponding lowering of emotional tone." Winter soothes the world in this way, not through absolute silence, but through an unhurried clarity. Winter sound. When silence is no longer empty. Winter, silence, is not the absence of sound. It is a different kind of sound. In cold air, sound becomes sharper, able to travel farther, less easily absorbed. Because of this, winter allows people to hear what is usually overlooked: a branch snapping, ice cracking, wind brushing across snow. Winter silence is a silence with structure. Jung regarded silence as the condition in which the unconscious begins to speak. When the outer world is no longer loud, deeper layers become audible. Winter light. When the world becomes dreamlike winter. Light is unlike summer light. The sun's angle is lower, its path slower, and ice crystals in the air cause light to bend, reflect in rare ways, halos around the sun, vertical pillars of light standing in cold air, faint mirages along the horizon. Winter light does not merely illuminate, it transforms reality. In Jungian psychology, light symbolizes not only consciousness but awareness. Winter does not give us more light, but a different light, softer, slanted, contemplative. Matter changes behavior when the world reveals its character. In deep cold, matter no longer behaves as it usually does. Water expands when it freezes. Metal becomes brittle. Rock fractures from contraction and expansion. Soil hardens, holding its shape. Familiar laws reveal another face of themselves. Winter is like a gentle test, compelling matter to expose its hidden properties, not to destroy it, but to reveal its deeper structure. Jung believed that human beings also reveal their true psychological structure only in cold periods, times of low energy, little light, diminished motivation, and yet it is precisely then that essence becomes most visible. Life does not disappear. It changes mode, living beings do. Not die en masse in winter, they change their survival strategy. Heart rates slow, metabolism decreases, immune systems reorganize, activity turns inward. Winter life is not showy, it is economical. In Symbols of Transformation, Jung wrote, "Regression is not merely a backward movement, but a return to the source of life." Winter is precisely this kind of healthy regression of the earth. Winter as a vast natural laboratory. In cold conditions, phenomena hidden by warmth begin to appear. Heat flows become clearer. Air layers separate distinctly. Sound, light, and matter behave differently. Life reveals deep adaptive strategies. Winter is not static. It is extraordinarily rich in information. But this information is not meant for high speed. It belongs to a slow rhythm, a Jungian perspective. Winter as the collective, unconscious. If summer is outward-facing consciousness, action, expansion, growth, then winter is inward-facing unconsciousness. Less light, less movement, less stimulation. Not to exhaust life, but to reorganize it. Jung believed that a civilization incapable of a psychological winter would collapse from exhaustion. The Earth does not make that mistake. Why this helps us sleep? Because when we hear winter, described as a special mode, we stop fearing slowness. We no longer see rest as failure. We understand stillness as part of how systems function. Sleep is not the cessation of life. Sleep is a change of mode. Before sleep, let this idea remain. Winter does not oppose life. It only asks life to live differently. And tonight, so do you. Winter is not an empty space in the year. It is another configuration of the world. Air layers itself. Light becomes dreamlike. Sound travels farther. Life turns inward. And as you lie down listening to this story, perhaps a very deep part of you is whispering, I do not need to be active in order to exist. I am allowed to switch into rest mode. In the previous part, we quietly realized that winter is not the absence of life, but another mode of the Earth. As temperatures fall, the world does not shut down. It shifts into another frequency, where movement slows, structures become visible, and what is usually hidden begins to appear. And when the world shifts into that frequency, something very strange happens. Phenomena that warm seasons do not allow suddenly become possible. Not because winter creates them, but because winter reveals them. Carl Gustav Jung once wrote in Psychology and Alchemy, "Cold is the agent of condensation. In nature as in the mind, only when it becomes cold enough do vague things take form." Part 2. Hidden phenomena that appear only in the cold winter is often misunderstood as a season of stillness. But if we listen carefully enough, if we observe slowly enough, we begin to recognize a very different truth. Winter is not silent. It simply does not make noise in ways we are accustomed to. Beneath the ice, within cold air, among snow crystals, the world is operating at another intensity, more subtle, sharper, and filled with rare phenomena. Snow carries cosmic dust. When sky and earth touch each, snowflake is not merely frozen water. Within its structure, science has found cosmic dust, tiny particles originating from meteorites, comets, and regions of space far beyond Earth. Winter allows the universe to fall gently to the ground. In warm seasons, these particles still exist, but turbulent air, strong winds, and higher temperatures make them difficult to retain. Winter, with its stable and deeply cold air, becomes a delicate net, collecting the smallest fragments of the cosmos. Jung once said in Man and His Symbols, "The small things are often the most important." A snowflake resting in the palm of your hand, carrying the memory of deep space. This is not an image to analyze, but one to contemplate. Rivers that flow backward. When water defies intuition, winter ice forms on the surface of rivers. Strong winds, low temperatures, and pressure differences can cause this ice layer to move opposite to the current beneath. The river appears to flow backward, not because the water has changed direction, but because what we see no longer matches what is actually operating. Jung saw this as a familiar psychological image. Consciousness often believes it, understands the movement of life, while the unconscious follows deeper currents that do not always align with the surface. In The Structure and Dynamics of the Psyche, he wrote, "The psyche consists of many layers. Winter reveals this truth in nature, thunder in snowstorms. When cold does not mean stillness. Thunder is usually associated with summer, with heat and strong convection. Yet, under very specific conditions, snowstorms can also produce thunder and lightning, a phenomenon known as thundersnow. Intensity can exist within cold. This shatters a deep assumption that cold equals weakness or lack of energy. In reality, cold is simply another way energy is organized. Jung believed many people confuse inner quiet with emptiness. Beneath calm surfaces, Energy still exists. It simply does not express itself loudly. Snow without clouds, diamond dust. In extremely cold regions, ice crystals can form directly in near-surface air, falling like shimmering dust without clouds, without storms. This phenomenon is known as diamond dust. The sky does not need preparation to create beauty. It only needs conditions that are quiet enough, cold enough. Jung viewed such moments as symbols of unconscious emergence, no clear cause, no linear logic, only the right inner conditions and the image appears. The sound of ice. When the earth speaks, frozen lakes are not silent. Frozen seas are not mute. Ice cracks, contracts, and slides against itself, producing sounds that are groaning, resonant, metallic, sharp, deep like seismic waves. Winter allows us to hear the earth in a very primal way. These sounds are often masked in warmer seasons by wind, rain, and human activity. Winter's clear and still air allows them to carry far and remain distinct. Jung wrote, "In memories, dreams, reflections, there are things in the psyche which we do not produce. They produce themselves." The sounds of ice are like this: halos, pillars, mirages. When light enters a dream ice, crystals in cold air are highly regular in shape. They refract light at precise angles, creating halos around the sun, vertical pillars of light, faint mirages along the horizon. The winter world feels as though it is dreaming while awake. Jung called this state numinous, when reality carries a dreamlike quality without losing its solidity. Winter does not conceal, it reveals. All these phenomena share one thing in common. They always exist, but appear only when conditions are cold enough. Just as in psychology, when life slows down, emotions settle and stimulation decreases, deeper images begin to surface. A Jungian view, winter as the Earth's collective dream. If summer is the waking state, winter is the planet's dream. Not illogical, not chaotic, but rich with symbols. Jung believed dreams are not interruptions of life, but what remains of life when consciousness rests. Why these phenomena help us sleep? Because they disrupt what we assume is normal, open a gentle sense of wonder, demand no action or response. They allow the mind to relax without becoming empty. Before sleep, let this idea remain: winter does not impoverish the world. It reveals deeper layers of it. And tonight, as you listen, perhaps a very deep part of you is also revealing itself, not to be analyzed, but to be allowed to rest. Winter phenomena are not abnormal. They are simply what appears when the world is quiet enough. Snow carries the universe. Rivers defy intuition. Light becomes dreamlike. Ice speaks. And as you lie still listening to this story, perhaps your mind is whispering, not all movement needs to be seen. Not all life needs to be loud. In the previous part, we stepped into winter as into a space of rare occurrences. Snow carrying cosmic dust, rivers flowing against intuition, light forming pillars, ice speaking like seismic waves. These phenomena reveal something important. Winter does not diminish the world, it reveals it differently. And when we observe long enough, slowly enough, we begin to notice an even deeper layer. Not just unusual phenomena, but structures that have always existed, usually concealed by warmer seasons. Winter does not create structure, it reveals structure. Carl Gustav Jung wrote in The Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious, "The psyche is by no means a homogeneous whole. Nature is the same." Part 3. Winter reveals the invisible structure of the world. For most of the year, the world operates in a state of mixing. Air moves vigorously. Water circulates constantly. Sound is swallowed by the wind. Light is scattered. Everything blends together, creating a sense of continuity, smooth, seamless, and difficult to divide into clear boundaries. But winter is different. When the cold is deep enough, what was once dissolved begins to separate. Layered air, when the sky gains structure. In winter, convection weakens. Cold air, heavier, settles close to the ground. Warmer air remains above. Instead of mixing, the layers stack upon one another, stable and distinct. The winter sky has layers. As a result, sound travels farther. Scents linger longer. Fog holds its shape. Winter shows us that space is not empty. It has structure, layers, and an inner order. Jung saw layering as a condition for deep awareness. When everything is mixed together, we see only the surface. When layers separate, depth appears. Lake water, when movement becomes visible. In warm seasons, lake water constantly mixes due to wind and heat. In winter especially, once ice forms, the water separates into clear thermal layers. Ice at the surface, cold water just beneath the ice, warmer water deeper below. A winter lake has the structure of a resting organism. Life in the lake does not disappear. It withdraws into the layers that suit it. Jung believed that psychic life is also layered. When consciousness rests, other layers take over. Winter demonstrates this truth in a tangible form. Snow, the layered memory of weather. Each snowfall carries its own signature: temperature, humidity, wind, atmospheric chemistry. As snow accumulates, it forms layers of memory. Scientists can read winter like a diary. Snow does not erase the past. It arranges the past into layers. In Memories, Dreams, Reflections, Jung wrote, "Memory is not a static thing, but a living process. Snow is the same. Heat flows when energy takes shape. In deep cold, temperature differences become more visible. Heat no longer dissolves into a uniform background. It appears as invisible boundaries, where ice is thick, where ice is thin, where water is moving. Energy does not disappear, it only changes how it reveals itself." Jung viewed psychological energy libido in the same way. When it is not discharged outward, it takes form inwardly. Sound. When space becomes a map, in cold air sound travels along clearer paths. We can sense distance, depth, the shape of space. Winter allows us to see space with our ears. The world becomes more three-dimensional, deeper. Jung believed that when the senses are not overloaded, they can lead us into symbolic experience. Light. When reality becomes semi-transparent ice, crystals cause light to reflect, bend. Winter light does not merely illuminate objects, it outlines the structure of the air itself. We do not only see objects, we see the environment around them. In Jungian psychology, this corresponds to moments when we do not only see thoughts, but the deeper context from which thoughts arise. Winter as a filter. All of this leads to a quiet realization. Winter is a filter. It does not add anything. It does not take anything away. It clarifies. What lacks stability dissolves. What has structure remains. Jung believed that in inner life, cold periods, times of low emotion, low motivation, are often feared. Yet these phases allow us to see what is truly structural and what is merely temporary illusion. A Jungian view: winter and the unconscious. If the unconscious holds the foundational structures of the psyche, then winter is the time when the unconscious is allowed to surface. No explanation required, no interpretation demanded, only observation. Jung wrote in The Undiscovered Self, wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, but by integration of the contraries. Winter integrates heat and cold, movement and stillness, life and rest. Why this brings us closer to sleep? Because when structure, the mind, becomes less chaotic, thoughts mix less. A sense of safety increases. Sleep requires structure, not stimulation. Winter provides exactly that. Before sleep, let this idea remain: not everything in your life is chaotic. Perhaps things are simply mixed together. And like winter, if you slow down enough, if it becomes cold enough, quiet enough, structure will reveal itself. Winter does not cover the world. It makes the world more transparent. Air has layers, water has depths, snow holds memory, light has form. And as you lie down listening to this story, perhaps a very deep part of you is realizing not everything needs to be resolved right now. Some structures reveal themselves only when we allow ourselves to rest. In the previous part, we saw winter as a filter revealing the structure of air, water, light, and memory arranged in layers. When the world becomes cold enough, it no longer dissolves everything into a single flowing mixture, but begins to separate, to take shape, to gain depth. And then, looking even deeper, a very natural question arises, one many people quietly carry with them when winter arrives. If everything slows down like this, is life still there? Nature's answer, if we are patient enough to listen, is very gentle. Life does not disappear. It only changes the way it exists. Part 4. Life does not hibernate. It changes state. Winter is often described as a time when life sleeps, but that is the perspective of a consciousness, accustomed to constant growth, to speed, to outward expression. If we look instead through the rhythm of nature, a very different truth appears. Life never stops. It only changes configuration. Carl Gustav Jung wrote in, "The structure and dynamics of the psyche life has no opposite. The opposite of death is birth. Winter is not the death of life. It is another form of life, less visible but no less subtle. Animals, when the body becomes an equation of conservation. In winter, many animals do not continue living as before. They reorganize their entire physiology. Heart rate slows. Metabolism drops deeply. Some organs temporarily reduce activity. Energy is preserved for essential life functions. The body becomes a minimalist, but highly efficient system. There is no panic, no resistance, only adjustment. Jung believed that in psychology, periods when people feel low energy, unmotivated, or emotionally flat are often judged negatively. Yet at a deeper level, these may be phases of energy redistribution, much like the body's winter, slower heartbeats. When life learns not to hurry, some animals reduce their winter heart rate to levels that seem barely compatible with life. Yet it is precisely this slowing that allows them to survive harsh conditions. Life does not persist through speed, but through the ability to regulate rhythm. Jung wrote in Psychological Types, "The psyche is not a machine that can be run at will. The body is the same." Insects. When life learns to pass through ice, one of winter's most remarkable phenomena is how insects face freezing. Many species remove water from their bodies and replace it with natural antifreeze compounds. They do not fight the cold. They change themselves to pass through it. In Jungian psychology, this is a perfect image of transformation, not clinging to the old form in order to resist, but allowing the old form to dissolve so that a new configuration may emerge. Microorganisms. Life at the threshold of visibility. Beneath snow, within frozen soil, and in the thin ice layers of lakes, microorganisms remain active. Slowly, very slowly, but not stopped. Life does not require bright light to continue. Jung wrote in, "The undiscovered self-man is not complete when he lives only in consciousness. Life too does not exist only where it is easily seen." Tree roots. Life turning inward. When winter arrives, trees do not continue to grow upward. They draw life inward into their roots. Storage increases. Exchange decreases. Living tissue is protected. Waiting begins. There is no despair, only patience. Jung viewed inward turning as an essential condition for development. Without withdrawal into the interior, individuation cannot occur. Ecosystems. Beneath snow, a hidden world. Snow is not a deadly cover. It is an insulating layer that protects stable temperatures below. Beneath the snow, Insects still move, microorganisms still exchange, roots remain alive. Winter creates discrete, yet resilient ecosystems. Jung believed the unconscious functions in the same way: quiet, unseen but sustaining psychological life, while consciousness rests. Lakes, seas, ice, life in extreme conditions. Even within ice, life does not disappear entirely. Micro-ecosystems persist in ice fissures, thin water layers, freezing margins. Life does not require ideal conditions. It only requires conditions sufficient for adaptation. This is a deeply Jungian lesson. The human psyche does not need perfect circumstances to endure. It needs the ability to adjust its mode of expression. Winter and extreme adaptability. Winter does not favor the strongest. It does not choose the fastest. It chooses the most flexible. Jung believed rigidity, whether in thought or emotion, inevitably leads to crisis. Life, both outer and inner, survives through the capacity to change states. A Jungian view. Winter and psychological transformation. In Jungian analysis, many human phases described as low, cold, or emotionally muted are not pathological. They are phases of transformation. The old dissolves. Energy withdraws inward. New structures are prepared. Not every silence is emptiness. Winter teaches this truth through biology. Why this brings us closer to sleep? Because when we hear about life-changing states, we no longer fear slowing down. We stop seeing rest as failure. We trust that something within is still working. Sleep is not disappearance. Sleep is a shift into another form of life. Before sleep, let this idea remain. If today you feel slower, quieter, lower in energy, perhaps you are not weakening. Perhaps you are changing state. Winter does not stop life. It compels life to become more intelligent. Less display, less waste, less futile resistance. And as you lie down listening to this story, perhaps a very deep part of you is whispering, "I do not need to shine in order to live. I only need to exist in the rhythm that suits me." In the previous part, we touched a very gentle truth. Life does not disappear in winter. It withdraws inward, restructures itself, conserves energy and waits. As surface movement slows, as living beings no longer present themselves to the light, the world appears quieter. But within that quiet, the earth begins to do something profoundly important. Something the warm seasons rarely allow. The earth begins to remember, not through writing, not through consciousness, but through layers, strata, traces, and time. Carl Gustav Jung wrote in Memories, Dreams, Reflections, "Memory is not a static thing, but a living process. Winter is the planet's process of memory." Part 5. Winter as the planet's archive of memory. For most of the year, the Earth is in a state of speaking. Water flows, winds move, living beings travel. The atmosphere mixes and traces are quickly erased. But winter is different. Winter is when the Earth becomes silent long enough to remember. Just as when a human being stops speaking, memory is finally able to settle. Snow and ice, the pages of the atmosphere. Each snowflake that falls carries traces of the air it passed through. Chemical composition, fine particulate matter, greenhouse gases, volcanic particles, even traces of solar activity. Snow does not merely fall, it records. In warmer seasons, these traces are quickly dissolved, mixed, and lost. But winter, with its low temperatures and slow rhythm, allows them to remain intact. Jung believed that memory can only be preserved when the mind is quiet enough not to overwrite itself. The Earth behaves in the same way. Ice cores, diaries spanning hundreds of thousands of years. In places where ice persists over long periods, snow falling year after year becomes compressed into ice, forming ice cores, vertical columns of memory extending back hundreds of thousands of years. Within each layer of ice, there is the CO2 concentration of a specific era. evidence of glacial periods or warming phases, volcanic ash from ancient eruptions, air trapped from prehistoric atmospheres. Ice cores are memory without editing. No story is retold. No memory is distorted. Only time layered upon time. Jung wrote in The Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious. The unconscious preserves its contents unchanged. Ice is the unconscious of the planet, frozen ground, where the past keeps its form. In permafrost, time seems to pause, ancient forests preserved, seeds tens of thousands of years old, ancient bacteria, footprints of animals long extinct. Winter does not only preserve data, it preserves life that once existed. Jung believed that in the psyche, very old experiences, even from early childhood or earlier, do not disappear. They are frozen in the unconscious, waiting for the right conditions to emerge. Permafrost performs the same function for the Earth. Frozen lakes, memory sealed. When a lake freezes, the Enix surface becomes a seal. Beneath it, methane gases are retained. Nutrients do not escape. Microorganisms persist in a slowed state. Biological traces are preserved. A winter lake resembles a sealed archive. No leakage, no disturbance. Jung believed that sealing memory is necessary so the psyche is not overwhelmed. Winter does this for the Earth. Winter does not only remember, it selects. Not everything is preserved. Only what is stable enough, clear enough, and resilient enough remains. Winter is the editor of time. In Jungian psychology, memories are not retained because they are morally important, but because they carry energy. The Earth operates similarly. Only traces with sufficient strength are held by ice and frozen ground. Winter and collective memory. If the collective unconscious contains humanity's ancient images, then winter contains the planet's collective memory. It does not narrate, it does not explain, it simply preserves. Jung wrote in Man and His Symbols, the unconscious is the deposit of all human experience. Ice is the deposit of all climatic experience. Why memory requires cold, heat causes decay. Movement erases, noise distorts. Only when it is cold enough can memory remain intact. This is why sleep, the cold state of consciousness, is when memory consolidation occurs. Winter is the Earth's long sleep. A Jungian view. Memory does not need immediate understanding. Jung did not believe that all memory must be brought into consciousness immediately. Some memories need time to rest, so they do not cause harm. The Earth behaves the same way. It does not read its memories. It holds them until conditions allow. Why this helps us sleep? Because when we hear of the Earth, remembering, we are less afraid of forgetting. We trust that not everything must be processed immediately. We allow ourselves to rest. Sleep is not the loss of memory. Sleep is entrusting memory to deeper layers for safekeeping. Before sleep, let this idea remain. The things you experience today do not disappear when you fall asleep. They are stored in a place safer than consciousness. Winter is not a gap in time. It is the Earth's library. Snow is the paper. Ice is the archive shelf. Permafrost is the deep vault of memory. And as you lie down listening to this story, perhaps a very deep part of you is whispering, I do not need to remember everything right now. There are deeper layers remembering for me. When the Earth has stored its memories in ice and snow, when data is sealed within stillness, the story of winter opens into another dimension, from the very small to the very vast. In the next part, we will gently widen and narrow our perspective. In the previous section, we listened to winter as the planet's silent library, where snow, ice, permafrost, and frozen lakes preserve the memory of the atmosphere of life, of ages long past. It was a story of time held still, of data sealed, of layered memories that do not need to be read immediately. But the Earth is not only a storage system, it is also a system of transmission. And when we step back, then lean in closer, we begin to sense something very subtle. What is preserved in winter does not remain still forever. From the smallest changes, waves of influence begin to spread outward, touching scales far larger than we might imagine. Part 6. Scale from the microscopic to the planetary. One of the things that makes winter truly special, not only emotionally, but also scientifically, is its ability to connect vastly different scales. During winter, the distance between the very small and the very large seems to shrink. A single ice crystal can be the beginning of a chain of climatic transformations. Carl Gustav Jung wrote in Synchronicity and a causal connecting principle. The smallest and most insignificant things can be of the greatest importance. Winter is a physical demonstration of this truth. Ice crystals, the geometry of natural order. Every snowflake begins with an incredibly small nucleus, perhaps a particle of dust, a grain of salt, or an unnamed molecule drifting in the air. Under cold and stable conditions, water molecules arrange themselves around that nucleus according to precise geometric patterns. No two snowflakes are exactly alike, yet all obey the same laws. The small is not chaotic. It carries a deep order. Jung saw this natural geometry as a symbol of the archetype, fundamental patterns that exist prior to consciousness. These structures are not designed by anyone, yet they always emerge when conditions are right. Chemical reactions within snow, silent processes. Snow is not simply frozen water. Within it, slow chemical reactions take place, influencing atmospheric composition, light reflection, cloud formation, surface energy balance. These reactions are tiny and gradual, yet enduring. Jung believed that profound psychological transformations do not occur through dramatic shocks, but through very small, persistent adjustments. From crystals to snowstorms. When the small connects to the vast billions of ice crystals coexisting in cold air, give rise to snow clouds, winter storms, cold convection systems. There is no clear boundary between the microscopic and the macroscopic. A single snowflake does not create a storm, but no storm can exist without the very first snowflake. In Jungian psychology, this mirrors how a small thought or a vague inner image, if repeated over time, can shape an entire inner life. Atmospheric currents. Winter rewriting the sky. Winter alters the structure of the atmosphere, generating cold air masses, redirecting winds, changing global pressure patterns. These changes do not affect only one region. They travel thousands of kilometers. Cold in one place can bring rain or drought to another. Jung emphasized that in any living system, no action is ever completely isolated. Every movement leaves a trace. Ocean currents, the memory of the sea, winter temperatures, directly influence ocean salinity and density, thereby affecting deep ocean currents. These currents transport heat, distribute nutrients, regulate global climate. A colder winter can alter the oceans for many years. Jung viewed the ocean as an ancient symbol of the collective unconscious, deep, slow, yet decisive in shaping surface life. Global heat distribution, a delicate balance. Winter is Mao, not merely a local phenomenon. It is part of the planet's global thermal balance. Ice reflects sunlight. Snow insulates the ground. Cold air regulates energy flows. Small changes in cold can amplify into large effects. Jung referred to a similar psychological process as enantiodromia, when a tendency accumulated long enough transforms into its opposite. From planetary scale back to the microscopic, a closed loop. What is remarkable is this. After spreading across planetary scales, these influences return to the microscopic. Climate affects new ice crystals. Ocean currents affect chemical reactions in snow. Global temperature affects every organism. There is no endpoint. only cycles. Jung believed that life, both psychological and natural, operates in circles, not straight lines. A Jungian view, the human within this chain of scales. Humans often feel small when contemplating the planet, but Jung believed that individual consciousness is where scales converge. Within one human being, microscopic memories exist, emotions ripple outward, social influence expands. Winter reminds us that no experience is too small to matter. Why this understanding helps us sleep? Because when we see ourselves as part of a chain of scales, we stop carrying everything alone. We trust that small things have meaning. We allow ourselves to rest. Sleep is not surrender. Sleep is placing oneself correctly within a larger system. Before sleep, let this idea remain: a slow breath, a gentle heartbeat, a fading thought. These very small things are also contributing to a greater order. Winter teaches us to see the world through a multi-scale lens. From ice crystals to snowstorms to atmospheric currents to planetary climate. There are no rigid boundaries, only spreading influences. And as you lie down listening to this story, perhaps a very deep part of you is whispering, "I do not need to be grand to have meaning." Even the smallest movements are being held. As this story gently reaches its final words, you may sense that winter is not merely a season of the year. It is a state of the world, and also a deeply familiar state of the human mind, a state in which nothing disappears, but settles. Not loud, not performative, not needing to prove its existence. Together we have walked through winter as a special mode of the earth where matter, light, sound, and life all change the way they operate. We listened to phenomena that only appear in cold, where the world is not silent but moves with a subtler rhythm. We saw how winter reveals the invisible structures of nature, as if the earth temporarily removes its familiar cloak of motion to show us the deeper foundation beneath. We recognized that life does not hibernate. It shifts, state turns inward, restructures, conserves energy and waits. We entered winter as the planet's archive of memory, where ice, snow, and frozen ground preserve what time does not wish to lose. And finally, we widened and narrowed our perspective to see how a single ice crystal can send its influence outward to the scale of global climate. Yet perhaps the most important thing lies not in any scientific fact, it lies in the feeling those facts evoke. Carl Gustav Jung believed that human beings truly rest only when the ego no longer has to control the world. When we sense that we are lying within a greater order, one that does not require constant intervention by consciousness, the nervous system finally allows itself to soften. Winter, in this sense, is a powerful symbol. It shows that the world continues to function, to balance, to remember, and to care for life, even as everything slows. Right now, as you lie still, the earth is still doing its work. The air remains layered, heat continues to circulate, oceans keep flowing, ice and snow preserve memory. Microorganisms continue their quiet activity in the dark. Nothing requires you to stay awake to oversee it. And just like the earth in winter, your body knows how to shift into rest. Your heart knows how to slow. Your breath knows how to deepen. Your brain knows how to release unnecessary thoughts. Sleep is not a task to complete. It is a state that arrives when you stop trying to maintain wakefulness. If today you carry unfinished thoughts, unnamed emotions, or vague worries about the future, you do not need to resolve them now. Winter teaches us that not everything must remain in motion to have value. Some phases are meant for being held, for settling, for being placed somewhere safer than conscious awareness. Jung wrote that the unconscious is not a chaotic realm, but a deeply self-regulating system. Sleep is the moment you entrust what remains unsorted to that system. Just as snow and ice hold memory for the earth, your unconscious will hold your experiences without judgment, without haste, without erasing their meaning. So if your eyelids are growing heavy, if this voice feels more distant, if images of ice, snow, cold light, and a slow world are blending into dreams that is entirely natural, you are missing nothing. You are doing exactly what winter invites: resting. You do not need to understand more. You do not need to remember more. You do not need to follow the story to its very end. Simply allow yourself to drift with that slow rhythm, the rhythm of winter, of the earth, and of your own body. And if there is one final idea worth carrying into this sleep, let it be this gentle trust. Even as you rest, the world continues safely. Even as you let go deeper, layers are holding you. Now you do not need to listen anymore. You do not need to try to fall asleep. Just remain still and let winter do its work. Good night.